I don't go on a lot of dates, but after weeks of texting, Daniel seemed normal enough. He wasn't overly pushy, didn't give off weird vibes, and looked decent in his photos when he invited me over for a homemade dinner at his family home. He claimed he was house-sitting. I figured, why not? A quiet dinner at a nice house sounded better than another crowded restaurant. The drive there took me outside the city, into a quieter suburb. The house was older but well-maintained. A classic two-story home with white shutters, the kind of place where you'd expect to hear the hum of a family inside. But when Daniel opened the door, the house was silent. No TV, no music, just the faint ticking of a clock. "Come in," he said, grinning. "Make yourself comfortable." I stepped inside, instantly hit by a stale, musty scent, like a house that hadn't been lived in for years. He led me to the dining room, where a candlelit table was already set. The effort was sweet, but something felt off. I noticed the photos first. Framed family pictures lined the walls, but when I looked closer, the faces were blurred. Not from poor photo quality, but as if someone had deliberately smudged them. "Your family?" I asked. "Yeah," he replied quickly. "They're not around much." That's when I realized how cold it was inside. Not just chilly, freezing, like the heat hadn't been on in days. My unease grew when I glanced toward the kitchen. The fridge was slightly ajar. Inside, rows of expired food sat untouched. Cartons of milk from 2019, moldy bread, and wilted vegetables. "Do you live here alone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He hesitated. "Sort of. Family's out of town." Something about the way he said it made my stomach turn. Midway through dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom. The hallway was dim, lined with more eerie photos. I glanced into one of the bedrooms, impeccably arranged like a teenager's room, complete with trophies and posters, but covered in dust. No one had slept there in years. Then, I saw a door at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar, revealing nothing but darkness. Curious, I pushed it open and stepped inside. A sharp, damp smell hit me instantly. Concrete. My foot hit something on the floor, a single wooden step leading downward. A basement. I reached for my phone light and flicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a bare concrete space with a single chair in the center, and a coil of rope draped over it. I turned to leave, but Daniel was suddenly there, standing in the doorway, blocking it. His smile was different now, too wide, too knowing. "My friend owes me $50, he chuckled. "He bet you wouldn't notice." My stomach dropped. Notice what? He took a step closer. "That this isn't my house." I didn't wait to hear more. I shoved past him with every ounce of strength I had, bolting down the hall. I heard him laugh behind me as I fumbled with the lock. The second the door flew open, I sprinted to my car, barely registering his voice calling out. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away. Later, I searched for the house online. It had been vacant for years. The real owners? An older couple who had died 5 years ago. Daniel's number was disconnected the next day. I never thought a first date could unravel into a real-life nightmare. I'm usually careful about who I meet, but when I connected with Alex on a dating app, his sincere tales of volunteering at a local homeless shelter drew me in. We arranged to meet at a small, unassuming cafe downtown, a place that felt both cozy and ordinary. I expected a pleasant evening, not an experience that would leave me questioning every detail afterward. The cafe was modestly decorated with warm lighting, soft music, and the quiet hum of conversation. I arrived early, feeling a mix of nervous excitement and cautious optimism. When Alex appeared, his confident smile and easy manner immediately put me at ease. Over coffee, he recounted stories of working with the shelter, describing the gratitude in people's eyes and the sorrow hidden behind each narrative. Yet beneath his friendly tone, there was a subtle air of mystery I couldn't ignore. Midway through our conversation, his phone rang abruptly. He excused himself and stepped outside to take the call, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the cafe's lingering ambiance. I found myself glancing around, feeling an inexplicable chill as if I were being observed. The shadows in the corners and the dim lighting suddenly felt foreboding. When Alex returned, his demeanor had shifted. In his hurry, he accidentally knocked over his bag, causing its contents to spill across the table. Among the scattered items lay a small USB drive with a handwritten label, "Donor Records." I hesitated, torn between returning it and satisfying my growing curiosity. I discreetly picked up the drive, resolving to examine its contents later that evening. After we said our goodbyes and went our separate ways, an uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Once home, I inserted the USB drive into my laptop. Instead of mundane files, I discovered a series of folders, each titled with the name of a different city. The first folder opened to reveal hundreds of photographs. Each image was of a person reported missing in various news articles. My heart pounded as I scrolled through folder after folder, each filled with images of strangers whose faces were once splashed across headlines. The final folder was chillingly labeled with today's date. Inside, there was only one file, a video. My hands trembled as I clicked play. The footage showed the very cafe where I had met Alex, but the timestamp was inexplicable, 3 weeks before we had even matched online. I watched in horror as the camera panned slowly across empty tables and dark, shadowed corners. At one point, the video captured a glimpse of me entering the cafe, a moment I had no memory of being recorded. The screen went black abruptly, leaving me with a profound sense of dread. Now, I lie awake at night haunted by unanswered questions. Who truly is Alex? What is the significance of those missing persons? And why was I recorded before our encounter? I have no clear answers, only a lingering terror that my life has been intruded upon by something sinister and unknown. Every time my phone buzzes or I see a USB drive, I am reminded that some mysteries are better left unsolved. I still shudder when I recall that unsettling evening. Every detail haunts my thoughts: the mysterious USB drive, the inexplicable video, and the secretive nature of Alex. I now wonder if every stranger conceals hidden truths. The experience has left me cautious, forever questioning the safety of trusting a charming smile and an alluring story. Some nights, I fear that the past might yet catch up with me indeed. I remember my first date vividly, even though it ended in a way I never imagined. I had met him online, and his profile promised adventure and mystery. When he invited me to his rose garden, an award-winning, sprawling collection of blooms, I felt intrigued and a little nervous. It was an overcast evening in early autumn, the kind that makes shadows stretch longer than they should. I arrived at his modest house on a quiet suburban street, and we drove together to his property. The garden looked almost otherworldly in the fading light, with roses arranged in neat rows and hidden alcoves that beckoned exploration. As we strolled along a winding path, his enthusiasm grew strangely fixated when we reached a cluster of white rose bushes. "They only bloom for special people," he murmured as if sharing a secret. His words sent a chill down my spine, though I dismissed it as a quirky compliment. Yet the air grew heavy, and the soft rustle of leaves became eerily synchronized with our steps. I could almost sense the garden watching us, its silence punctuated by inexplicable sounds in the distance. After a while, we sat on a stone bench to admire the roses. It was then I noticed my silver bracelet, a cherished gift, was missing from my wrist. I mentioned it casually, expecting concern or assistance, but he immediately brushed it off. "You must have dropped it near the roses," he asserted, his tone oddly cold. I insisted I was certain I still wore it, yet he was adamant. Reluctantly, I agreed to retrace my steps through the garden as darkness began to settle around us. As we searched, the garden's atmosphere turned oppressive. Every rustle in the dark seemed amplified. Every shadow held secrets. While near the white rose bushes, I noticed a glint of metal beneath a patch of soil. Curiosity and dread compelled me to dig with my hands. To my shock, I unearthed a charm bracelet, its metal dulled by time and encrusted with earth. The tiny charms bore initials that were unfamiliar to me. My heart raced as he leaned in and sighed. "Guess you're not the first to lose one here." His words echoed around us, blending with the unsettling whispers of the night, leaving me frozen in fear. That night, I left the garden clutching the strange charm bracelet, my mind reeling from the inexplicable events. The drive home was filled with a heavy silence and the haunting echo of his words. I questioned everything about the evening: his motives, the garden's peculiar energy, and the eerie coincidences that now felt too deliberate to ignore. Even now, whenever I see a rose garden, or hear the rustle of leaves in the wind, a deep unease settles over me. I have never learned the truth behind that night, and sometimes I fear that some secrets are best left buried among the roses. In the days that followed, I found myself haunted by dreams of that night. I would wake up with the faint scent of roses and the inexplicable sound of whispered warnings lingering in the silence of my room. Although I eventually returned the charm bracelet to its rightful owner at a local antique shop, the unsettling feeling never fully left me. Sometimes I wonder if the garden holds memories of all the lost trinkets and if each rose carries a secret. The experience remains a chilling reminder that some first impressions can hide dark truths, and some mysteries are never meant to be solved. Even now, I remain vigilant, forever wary of what lies beneath beauty.